So from Cam to Cam, because it's widely expected the Tennessee Titans, who are on the clock right now, are going to select Cam Ward. We're going to bring in Jory Epstein, our insider right now, who has just written a feature and knows more about Cam Ward than most of the world through this process. And Jory, I just want you to give everybody a little bit of insight, what you've learned about Cam in this process that we need to know going into tonight.
Yeah, great to be on with you guys and not sharing the couch with y'all, but you guys are already getting the vibes all the way there. Yes, with Cam Ward, it was fascinating. I mean, I went really deep and I wanted to understand this is a player who threw the ball 10.9 times per game in high school. He was barely throwing. And college recruiters were like, well, how are we supposed to give this guy a scholarship when he comes to our camp and looks great and has a live arm, but he's not actually throwing it, so we don't actually have tape or anything. And he goes from that to incarnate word in FCS school to Washington State to have Heisman finalist at Miami. And now we are at the NFL draft where he's expected to just momentarily be the first overall pick. And so you're talking about someone who couldn't get a college scholarship for his passing for so long, and now he's going to get the first overall pick for his passing.
At this point, when you've looked into him, like the personality, what he's looking for, why do you like the fit for Cam and the Titans?
Yeah, I like it for a couple reasons, one of which is that Cam does not like the spotlight. You'll notice, and we talked about it on our shows this week, this is an underrated player, under the radar even more so, because we are not actually talking about him much. We're talking about Shedeur. Well, that's what Cam wants. And in Tennessee, he might be able to fly from an off-the-field standpoint a little bit under the radar. But this is a guy who he wants to be creative. He wants to be aggressive. And I expect Brian Callahan to let him be aggressive the way he let Joe Burrow be aggressive.
Do you think kind of his lack of maybe polish in a way, like he hasn't been since 9, 10 years old, or being in a wing T offense, not really been that guy. Do you think that's kind of just helped him and made kind of shaped him like this, where he's like, yeah, I'm okay not being that guy right now? Did it, like his personality kind of come across that way as maybe like, hey, he became this quarterback as opposed to being like maybe anointed at 11 years old?
Yeah, he loves it. His high school coach was very defensive about the fact that they ran the wing T. Goes, look, some of these five-star recruits have everything given to them all of the time. They come in, they expect things. Cam Ward had nothing given to him. He had to earn it in high school. He had to earn the scholarship, and he had to earn every single step. And he has earned the first overall pick. And I'll say, I understand that he's not a Caleb Williams touted product, but this is not someone who would have been the 7th or 8th draft pick, quarterback drafted like we're hearing. I asked 5 different teams this week, and all of them said he would have been at least the 4th quarterback drafted last year. And I had one NFC team who told me the 3rd team. And so he's not Caleb Williams. He's not Jaden Daniels, but he's really close to Drake May by most teams' assessments of him when you just look at the grades for them this year and the grades for them last year.
Jory, do you think this is the right move for the Titans to be taking a quarterback at this point in their rebuild?
I do. I mean, it's easy to say, oh, you need a lot of pieces. And I do think there are teams like the Saints and the Browns who need more pieces before they get the quarterback. But Brian Callahan was hired to get that quarterback ready to go. They need a quarterback. They have the first overall pick. And there is one guy this year who can actually help them immediately. That's Cam Ward.
Jory, we appreciate it. Keep hanging on. I know we're going to come back to you a million times, so don't get too comfortable. But thanks for hanging out with us. Look, Nate, the most forgotten first overall pick that I can remember for a team that's often forgotten. In fact, for all you guys that are watching, if you're watching on ESPN on your TV right now, they just spent the first half of this time on the clock showing Shedeur Sanders highlights, not Cam Ward.
That was pretty crazy.
This is where we are. So I guess as we look at the quarterback big board and kind of see where everything is, what are Titans fans getting in Cam Ward?
Jory nailed it too, where it's like, I think this perception that he is the best of a bad bunch. That's what kind of Cam Ward has been kind of painted as, it feels like, with this kind of narrative, the narrative scouting of him. But what Jory said is true. For me, I had him above J.J. McCarthy, in between Jane Daniels and J.J. McCarthy. I think this is a true first-round quarterback. This is a guy that you take in the top half of the first round, that you can be a potential franchise quarterback. He's creative, but I was brought up that wing T stuff because I think the lack of mechanical teaching that he's had has led to is a strength of his, because he can operate at different times. He can operate on his own time. But the thing is, it's still well written. Like, he's actually really good. I've used the line that he's a jazz musician that reads sheet music, and that's how he plays. And so it's creativity, but the in-structure stuff is very good, and that's what's exciting about him.
Man, I'm not sure if you saw, but they just compared him to Patrick Mahomes. What's your thoughts on that?
So McNair has been my comparison for him. Steve McNair light.
I mean, Steve McNair light is a nice
and then so that made the position, or that comparison, before Tennessee was getting that #1 pick, and then I was like, oh, now this just seems lazy. But that is what you're getting, is just that creative flair, his balance is where his athleticism is, not his speed. So it's a different type of athlete back there with some accuracy, some cool throws. You know, clean up the fumbles a little bit, but really fun player.
And Fitz, by the way, like to come back to your point about, they're a rather forgettable franchise. You know how you become a little more memorable? You hit at the quarterback position. You don't go through an entire season where it's like, well, Mason Rudolph or Will Levis, like which one of these two guys are we doing this week? So I do think they've done a good job to set up the ecosystem around him. And, again, when the guy's there if he's a top 5-ish type quarterback in last year's class, you take that guy first in this year's class.
But what you just said is one of the things that drives me crazy about this analysis. Like, here's what I would love to do over the course of the next several hours in the quarterback position. While we have to have some of these conversations, I think we need to peel away some of the gross conversations that I've been having for months. It does not matter where Cam Ward would have ranked in last year's draft class, but that's what we all do. I did it. We all do it. We're like, well, last year he would hit that. It doesn't help the Titans. Like, they are in a situation right now where they need a franchise quarterback, and the closest bet that they can get to a franchise quarterback is Cam Ward. So I think part of this context of, like, trying to expect him to live up to who Jaden Daniels was or C.J. Stroud was, like, let's start putting these guys in different categories and stop asking everybody to be everybody. By the way, the pick is in. It is official. Cam Ward is a Tennessee Titan. This is, for the Titan fan base, this is the season of hope. Like I started at the beginning. This is that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And you used a word there. It's a bet. And that's what all these prospects are. It's a big pie chart. They could be a star, they could be a starter, they could be a backup, or they can be a bust in some way, shape, or form. And that's what Cam Ward is. It's the bet to that stardom, that thing that every team is chasing. But I do think his floor is way higher than it's been made out to be, where it's like, I think he has a high likelihood to be a starter with more to tap into. That's what makes him fun. And Charles has mentioned this, but the ecosystem, and what Matt's mentioned, the offensive line they have around him, I think it's going to be a kind of a fun rookie year with some ups and downs, but it's a better ecosystem to start him out.
But where we see ecosystem differently, and by the way,
oh boy,
we do have a trade.
Okay.
It is official. We'll get you the information when we have it, but the Jacksonville Jaguars are on the clock. So it took all of one pick to get our
There we are.
one pick to get
there goes that chalk.
I know, there it is.
I will say this about Cam Ward. My fear, the ecosystem, we've talked about the players around him. My fear is the organization around him. Like, they fire John Robinson, but they keep Mike Vrabel. Then they fire Mike Vrabel after they hired Rand Carthon. Then they fire Rand Carthon. Like, just the endless cycle that comes with poor management and poor ownership. Like, those are, like, I worry about Cam Ward because I worry that stability from an organization is not something you can count on from the Titans. I said it when Trevor Lawrence was drafted. I'll say it again tonight. I think it is far more likely that the Tennessee Titans fail Cam Ward than Cam Ward fail the Tennessee Titans. And what we're going to have to do as a culture is we're going to have to learn, instead of just sitting there saying player's a bust, you're going to have to look at it at some point. I think the Titans are an example of this and say team made the player a bust.
Yeah, I mean, if you're an organization that's dealt with a lot of instability, why not draft a quarterback that's made a lot of money off of it over the last few years? Going from Incarnate Word to Washington State to Miami. You watch the Miami Hurricanes this year, they don't go anywhere without Cam Ward.
No.
That defense was terrible.
Terrible.
I mean, they're one game away from the CFP, and they can't stop Syracuse from scoring 40 points in their head.
Bob Kraft went from an A+ owner to got rated F by his players last year.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, quarterbacks do a lot. Quarterbacks it's an air freshener for the entire franchise.
And this is a guy that can do the same thing.
I think so too.
I know that we don't talk about the Titans all that much. If you watch the Titans late season, that was a really tough watch by the end of the year. But I do think if they're going to give themselves a chance to change things, this guy's about as good as bad as they have.
Well, on that tradition, let's stop talking about the Titans. We have a trade. Let's tell you what Ian Rappaport is telling us, that at this point, the Browns and Jaguars have agreed to a block